Welcome to Those Who Can't Do. I am Andrea Forkham, and today I am fulfilling probably my high school version of me's greatest dream. I am chatting today with Jaret Reddick, who is the lead singer of Bowling for Soup and also a solo artist and also a voice actor as well, which I did not know until we dove into your Wikipedia, but you are one of the voices on Phineas and Ferb as well.
I am. Yeah, I sing the theme song. So, yeah, it's funny. As many hit songs as I have, the Phineas and Ferb theme is the biggest hit I have.
Really?
Yeah.
That is so cool. I actually was in VidCon a month ago and I met Dan, the creator of Phineas and Ferb. And so I felt like it was kind of a full circle moment that I'm chatting with you now right after do you get to work with him a lot?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a really cool experience, honestly. When I first took that meeting, I had been up for a lot of shows already, because I had done some stuff like Freaky Friday and I had already done the theme to Jimmy Neutron and a few things here and there. And so since that time, I had been getting all these meetings to be able to do music for a show. And but basically once you get tied to a show, if the show doesn't get picked up, then you don't either. And so after all that work so I almost didn't take this meeting with Dan and Swampy, but my manager was like, man, you're already there, you're going. And so I went. I fell instantly in love with these guys, and I knew it was going to be a hit show. And it was so cool. I mean, Dan had a stack of Bowling for Soup CDs for me to sign. And so I was just like, oh, man. So I knew he was a fan. The coolest thing in the world is I went there the first time, and it was those two sharing an office, and they had one secretary. By the time I came back to Disney, the show had launched, and they had a half of a floor. By the next time I came back, they had 2 floors. And then a year later, they had their own building. And then they had to move them offsite. I just got to see that show explode. And so being a part of it was really cool.
And it's got to be fun too with Dan because I feel like he makes himself very accessible to his fans in a way a lot of creators don't. I feel like many, once they reach that level, they just kind of put some distance there. But I feel like he shares so much online. He interacts a lot with his fans online, which I think is really fun. And that's something you do as well, which is how I stumbled back across you is there was a video you posted of somebody, I think they were singing karaoke. They were singing 1985. It was just like you in a restaurant, they're singing my song and they don't realize that it's mine. Did that person ever surface and be like, oh, that was me? Or did they ever reach out after that?
I mean, sometimes they do. I mean, I would think that's almost a trope for me. I mean, it's like, that's like content that I can make over and over again because I do hear my songs all the time. That one, I'm not sure which one you're actually speaking about, but it does happen a lot where they do reach out or whatever. And they're just like, holy crap, I didn't even know you were in the room, and, so that's super fun. The coolest one that ever happened to me though was I went into I love piano bars. And so I think I'm not atypical as far as like you said, as far as an artist, I do love to be in the world. And I like a lot of things that a lot of artists don't like. And piano bars are my favorite thing ever. And my wife and I were at a piano bar one time and it was really early and the musicians were in there just warming up. And the guy started playing a deep Bowling for Soup cut. I couldn't believe it. I was just like,
you're like, yeah, I don't know those lyrics anymore.
I swear. Yeah. I was just like, this is crazy. And so then I ended up just running into the guy in the bathroom or whatever. And he was like, oh my God. And I was just like, dude, you just did this song up there. And I'm just like, he goes, oh yeah, I warm up with that every day. And then of course, later on that night, they did 1985 and stuff. But yeah, I agree with you about Dan. I think we're sort of those kind of guys that sort of TikTok was really created for. I like to say, I sort of can't get enough of making people laugh, and I guess there's a bit of an attention seeking aspect to it too. I mean, if I'm being totally honest,
for all of us, right?
Right. I mean, that's just it, right? That is sort of the need that TikTok does fulfill is that whether 13 people are seeing it or 13,000, you're getting this attention that that nobody really, you're asking for it. You just get it, and so it's funny to watch. I do love Dan's content though. And I love when people let you into their real lives on there. And I try to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that there's a big nostalgia piece, right, for all of us. And when we come across ours, like another couple of creators that I've been following is the whole group from Boy Meets World and their podcast and all of that stuff that they've been doing. And it hits something because there are these like touchstone moments in our mind. Like I have a sharp memory of driving around right after I got my license, listening to 1985 with my friends, like going around and just like yell singing. And I'm completely tone deaf, so it didn't sound good, but it's a great memory, you know? And
Yeah.
so every time I hear that song, that's exactly where it puts me. What is it like for you when you hear other people singing your song? Because you said it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever go up to them and say like, hey, that's my song? Or do you just like let it be?
Seldom do I have to do that. Like, I'm fairly lucky in that I'm a fairly recognizable guy, and so more often than not, somebody else takes care of that for me, or I just sort
Nice.
of stay quiet. I mean, I'm a little bit shy. This is really weird to say because I think if you know me, I'm a really big personality or whatever, but I am not like in new sort of situations or whatever. I'm not the most outgoing guy. Until you put a microphone in my hand. And then once a microphone is in my hand, it's just a completely different thing. And it's not, it's just so, um, I don't always feel comfortable. I also have crippling anxiety. And so I don't always feel
Mm.
comfortable walking outside. But I agree with you though because see, that's I'm the same way. Like I follow all these people from my childhood or whatever. And like, if I get like Leia Thompson from Back to the Future, and if I comment on something on her thing and she responds back and I'm like, I can't believe it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite bands is a band called Bad Religion. And they thumbs up one of my posts yesterday. And I was just like, and so it is so funny how we're all affected by that, and it's funny that how
Yeah.
like, and I sort of, I guess I sort of take that into consideration when I'm, trying to make sure that I respond, as much as I possibly can, because I just know how good that feels for me, and if somebody's
Yeah.
taking the time to comment on my stuff, I really do try to be more interactive, I think, than most, especially most people my age. You know what I mean? Like I'm 52 and my band's been together 30 years. And so I am definitely not the norm as far as my activity on social media.
Yeah. On the note of how much time has passed since that song came out. I mean, it came out 2004.
Yeah.
And that meant that 1985 was 19 years before that.
Yeah.
And now it is 2024.
Yeah.
And so now it is more time since that song has come out than it had been like since 1985 when the song came out. If it were to come out again today, how would it have to be rewritten? Like if it was written if it was like the song was called 2004 instead of
Yeah.
1985,
Yeah.
who do you like, what artists and stuff do you think would be in there?
Do you know what my favorite thing about this question is? And I love the way that you asked it because it's completely set me up for the perfect answer. And that is, it's already been done for us. Like if you get on TikTok and search 1985 parody, there's one for like every year. Like, and they do such
Really?
good jobs. I mean, like it's amazing. Like there are a few of them where you're just like, you can't believe it. Like but it's like, Kelly and Justin on American Idol and Real World on MTV and, things like that. Like, and so it's super, super cool. There's a 1999, there's a 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like I always say, and I'm not sure if we're a PG show here, so I'll keep this subtle. But I always say I'm waiting on 2006 because of the obvious rhyme,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? And no,
Yeah.
I kid. So people are constantly asking me like, are you going to do an update of the song? And I'm like, I sort of almost feel like if I did it, it would discourage all of these other kids that are doing it on the internet. And I just love seeing it. Like
Yeah.
and some of these go viral and it's really, really cool. Cause the song sort of gets a little nod, and it's an important
Yeah.
song to me.
Yeah, important to a ton of people, me included. So that is awesome. Okay, and
Thank
we
you.
are going to talk about like teacher stuff, but I just had to fangirl a little bit
Thank you.
and
Well,
talk
I
a little bit
appreciate it.
about that stuff. Yeah. So how did you get started making music? Was there an educator that you worked with that helped you along that path, or did you find it on your own?
Music I found on my own. Coincidentally, I found it in the back of a classroom. And I'll never forget this day. I grew up in a fairly musical house. Not that my parents played instruments or anything like that. There was just always music playing. There was always music in the car. That scene in National Lampoon's Vacation where they're going around the corner and the parents are just singing and harmonizing, and the kids are rolling their eyes and they put their headphones on. I mean, that was me and my brother. Only we didn't have Walkmans yet, so like we actually had to listen to it. And but it taught me, unintentionally, my mother was teaching me how to harmonize, and I was getting exposed to the Eagles and Kenny Rogers and all of this stuff in my early life that would really come into play big later in life when I started writing songs. But music wasn't anything but just something that, I like to listen to music until I took a speed test in multiplication in the 6th grade in math class, in Miss Cook's math class. And if you got 100 on the speed test, you got free time, which back in those days just meant you went back to the back of the classroom and they had board games back there and you could do whatever you wanted. And I got 100 every time. And so I always got free time. So the kids that didn't get free 100, they had to stay and do practice worksheets and stuff. And this kid named Greg Norman had his Walkman. And I heard, this is so funny today to say, but I heard Ozzy Osbourne Crazy Train. And I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I need more of this in my life. Like Ozzy was like this scary, he was the devil, and people were like really, really terrified of him. And it was like this whole thing, but I was like, I don't know whatever. I got to have more of that. And it's the juxtaposition of that song now being in the Trolls movie. And I have a video of my like 6-year-old kid at the time with his friends jumping up and down in a trampoline singing "Going Off the Rails" on the crazy train. And it's in car commercials and you hear it at every sporting event, and like,
yeah,
the darkness of that song is sort of like part of like what reeled me in, it's just, there was just this sort of like mystery to it all. So shortly after that, I heard Motley Crue and I saw Tommy Lee play the drums, and I was just like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a drummer. And so shortly after that, I got a drum set, started playing drums in school, and I've been in bands ever since doing something. But that is 100% the day that my life started away from sports and into the direction of music. So
just because it ended up that you were really good at multiplication is how you actually got started in music.
It's a true story. I mean, it's like honestly, because you got to think about it. Like maybe I would have heard that song eventually, and I probably would have, because Greg was one of my best friends at the time, but I wouldn't have heard it that day in those conditions in that room, and just to be impacted by it the way that I was. I mean, I'll never forget it. It was like a literal wave came over me, and I was just like, this is what I want to be. I want to be a part of this.
That is awesome.
That's happened to me two other times in my life that I can specifically remember, but there's no school tie-in.
So when you kind of made that decision, what grade were you in?
I was in the 6th grade, and so I was going into junior high, and so at that point I could sign up for band and start to, I asked for a drum set for Christmas that year, and everything just sort of worked out really good. My parents had a friend who came over once a week and taught me drum lessons, and he actually made me learn correctly. So like I wanted to play the drum set and play Tommy Lee songs, I wanted to play Motley Crue songs, and he actually made me learn snare and the fundamentals first, which got me an express ticket to a band in junior high before I really just started, but I was could already do all the things that they were teaching all the other kids. And so that pretty much, first and second chair all through junior high and high school. And so I just really lucked out in the way that I got set up for that, and then drum lessons I took a few piano lessons in the 8th grade, but everything else I'm self-taught. So, eventually I would pick up the guitar and start writing songs and things like that. But that happens a little later in life.
Yeah. So how did the music teachers respond to your obvious passion? Did they like encourage you with that, or did they really recognize it in class?
It's funny because the other thing about me is that I was a class clown, and but I also, this is in the 80s. And so, was listening to Motley Crue and Rat and Ozzy. And so by this time I also started to have the long hair and, I really didn't, um, I, I was definitely sort of like the different, I was the rocker kid amongst all of the band nerds, and,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I think I had a very interesting relationship, especially with the band directors, in that, like, I definitely know that they saw the talent that I had, or at least, the skills that I had. I think a lot of them were a little harder on me because I think they probably worried a little bit about the crowd that I was running around with, because, those are all the guys that they, suspect of being the stoner kids or whatever. Ironically,
Right.
me and my friends were part of the Just Say No generation. That we didn't do anything. I mean, and I'm talking all the way through high school. Like, I was like nothing. I mean, I didn't even
Yeah.
drink when I turned 21 years old. Like, I went to El Chico's and had iced tea. What's cool is that, and I have this in other areas of education as well, but is that since school, um, my junior high band director has since passed, but he had reached out to me. He saw a show telling me how proud he was, but my high school band director was really, really hard on me. And I know why, because again, I wasn't taking anything really seriously. Band really was, it wasn't hard, and you got your PE credits out of the way, and you got to go on trips, and you got to be around girls all the time. And that was kind of the reasoning for me, for like even wanting to be in there.
Yeah.
And so he was a little hard on me, and he has since written me several times of just like, hey, we knew, he's actually said, like, we all had our eye on you in the when you were in junior high. Like, everybody knew you were going to do great stuff. We just didn't know, where it was going to head. So if we were
Yeah.
harder on you, and it seems like that, then we are, or other kids, I hope you understand. And it's like, it's the exact opposite of the treatment that I got from the theater arts teacher that really changed my life. But I'm so grateful for it as I look back on it now. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I see why, like, this kid wasn't getting in trouble for this, and this kid, and then I'm kind of getting in trend. Why am I always the one that gets, and,
Yeah.
and I guess it sort of makes sense. I mean, they just wanted me to live up to my potential, and I should be thankful for that. I am thankful for that.
Yeah. And I think from a teacher's perspective, sometimes it can be really scary when you have a kid that is so obviously gifted because you want so many things for them so badly.
Yeah.
And some kids have the vision and the work ethic to put forward, but there's always the fear of, because we've all seen kids that have incredible talent and then they make a couple of choices and their life just takes a left turn and then it breaks your heart. And so you see a kid like, like you were, where you're just like, you
Yeah.
want so bad to see them, go and tour and live out all their dreams and all that. So it sounds like that's kind of what was going on there.
Yeah. And, but what's crazy is, though, is I look back and sort of see, we can all do this, right? I mean, Facebook affords us the ability to go back and go, oh, that was the kid that could do this and this and this. And, like, what's he doing now? Oh my God. Like, that guy's had a rough life. And, and
Yeah.
you sort of look back on those things and go, this was the high school football, guy that was supposed to go on to the pros, and he robbed a Taco Bueno, and it's just like, what is, and
Right.
that actually happened, actually. Like, one of our
Yeah. Oh
friends
my
robbed
God.
yeah, this guy was supposed to go to the NFL, and he, like, robbed a freaking Taco Bell, and, dude went away. But, so, like, you could, and I guess that's just it too, right? You realize why it sort of, like, goes, the easy thing is to go over into coaches and the reason why they're so hard on some of those kids, and it does,
Yeah.
it makes sense. And, I see it even with my kids' friends. My oldest son is 18 now, and just these little sweet little boys that were all over at my house having so much fun and playing basketball and swimming and all this stuff. And some of them, he's about to start an OU, and he's got a few friends that now they're in trouble and they're not going to go to school, and they've just kind of chosen a different path. And it's just a bummer. So I would imagine for a
Yeah.
teacher, it's even harder because you're spending every day with them, and you see the potential. And I know now more
Yeah.
than ever how you guys can see the potential in every single kid. I didn't really think that was a thing when I was a kid. Like I thought, okay, they have their favorites and this is this or whatever. But no, I see it because my child, my 11-year-old is severely ADHD, and just the amount of care that his teachers put into his life and his education it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. Like I just sit there sometimes at our meetings that we have with them, because we have a thing in Texas that affords us to do that. And I'm just like, good, my God, they're actually paying attention to this kid, and
Yeah.
it's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you mentioned that one of the teachers that really impacted you most was, you said, your theater teacher?
Yeah, I sing about him. He's I name check him in Ohio. Went to Cleveland with some guy named Leland. His name was Leland
Oh,
James.
okay.
And then I talked to him in my hometown. This song goes out to the professor who said, "Son, pick a path and stay the same because charisma is the key to opportunity." And it's so crazy. He's since passed too, but his son just came to my show, and his son's a year older than me. And his son comes to my shows sometimes, and we'll just share, and I'll just talk about the impact that this guy had on my life. And he would tell me, stories about how like his dad would. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry. uh, about how his dad would, still talk about me. And I was just this little class clown, little fat kid. But I had potential that this guy saw. I go from literally just taking this class to have an easy elective to being in the one act play to winning all-star cast in state in Texas. And like he literally changed my life. Like he took what other people were seeing as me being disruptive, and he turned it into creativity. And it was something that I had apart from like all my other friends, all my other musician friends, all my band friends. None of them were in there. And it was like this outlet that I had to just like be on the stage and be me and be overt and just be tall and big, and that man did that for me. And I it's something that I will never forget. And I pay tribute to him anytime I can. I talk about it because
Yeah.
I love that man with everything I got.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've got lyrics in the song Ohio. Is that the song that you
Yeah.
now, is that a quote from something he said? What was it?
No, so that's in my hometown. I actually I lyriced it up a little bit, but
Right.
his thing was always like, you need to be you. Don't change because your friends, don't change because your teachers, don't change because your parents, don't change. You be you. You're a force. You you are going to be something. And he would just pound that into me all the time. And man, it nobody had ever spoken to me that way. I don't begin to say that I understand what he saw in me. I really don't. I don't know that I would have picked me out of a lineup and gone, that's a kid that needs this, but he did. And
Yeah.
it's funny. It's like kids from school still talk about those plays and stuff, and it gets mentioned from time to time. And he and I just had a unique bond. I didn't even call him Mr.
Yeah.
James. His name was Rufus Leland James, so I called him RL, and everybody else had to call him Mr. James. And it just it's like it's like a movie.
That's
It's
awesome.
like that
Yeah.
teacher kid relationship out of a movie where it's just like he just like he's going to keep me in line in this area and this area. And these little things he just let
Mhm.
go. But
Yeah.
yeah, great,
Yeah.
great, great man.
That's so awesome. Do you remember what your favorite acting role was that you had when you were working with him?
Yeah, I did a thing called An Actor's Nightmare, and it was essentially just a stand up bit. Like I was on stage the entire play, and I was a guy who I just walked onto the stage, and I thought I was like on my way to work, and all of a sudden I look around, and I'm in costume and I'm interacting with actors and there's an audience. And I even break the fourth wall. Like I'm asking like, hey guys, what am I doing here? I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing up here, and that kind of thing. And so,
Yeah.
and that's the reason he picked that play is because he knew I really wanted to be a stand-up comedian. He's like, well, let's just give you the stage, and he never said that, but this play was built around me, and this is my senior year. And then but I interacted with all the other actors who would come in, and they think they're doing the actual play that they're to do. And so and they're calling me Eddie, and I'm thrown into all these things and these situations, and I'm trying to just, I just finally stop fighting it and try to start blending in. But
Yeah.
that was a good one. That's the one that I won the All-Star Cast and State for. And I have a regret about that play. I wore a wig because I wouldn't cut my hair. And back then, your long hair was so important to you if you're a musician. And I wish I would have cut my hair, because the wig did sort of look ridiculous. But I think about it all the time. I'm like, why didn't I just cut my hair and like make this thing? We could have, and not that the play didn't do fine, but I think about that a lot for some reason. I get a little locked down.
It's so funny, the things that were like, oh, man, if I'd only. I mean, it sounds like it still did incredibly well, and you won awards and all of that.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah,
now, have you ever tried your hand at stand up?
No, I've never done it. I did improv comedy, which is
okay.
I know it's for most comedians that's a dirty word, but I did improv for a while, and I've thought about it. I mean, the great thing about the band that I'm in is I get to do stand up every night. Like we do just as many jokes as we do songs, and it's all ad lib, it's all improv, and so I found very quickly that when we started this band that we didn't have enough songs to fill up a set, but we wanted to do shows. And so we would just try to make each other laugh. And that became a big part of our show. I mean, people will say online, I mean, not very often anymore, but sometimes you'll get it. My gosh, you guys talk a lot between songs. And the audience comes to our defense and they're like, that's the reason we're here. We can listen to the songs at home. Like, we want to hear what they're going to say.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much truth to that. Like, because I've been to concerts before where like the person doesn't even talk to the audience at all.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of come out, they sing their song, they disappear. Like, and I'm like, well, all right. Like, yes, yay. Like, love that. That's why we're here. But also, like, we're seeing you in person. It'd be nice if you acknowledged you weren't alone. Like,
I know, right? I agree. Like, I think, and I do get it. Like, if it's just part of like what they're doing and all of that, but like, you want to be welcomed in, right? My rule number one for me, if I'm advising anybody, is you never make the audience uncomfortable, right? And so what makes the audience uncomfortable? Well, first of all, quiet makes the audience uncomfortable. So if you go get a drink, of water, like there needs to be some sort of noise happening. Either someone's like playing a guitar or there's some kind of piano or somebody's talking. So the rule, like, it's not really a rule. It's an unspoken rule in my band. It's like if they see me going back to get a drink and I don't have my microphone in my hand, start talking on that microphone. Not that we don't ever have quiet. Anytime I've been to a show like that, where like the guy is like, it's in between songs and then there's 30 seconds of just silence. And you're just like, okay, this is weird, and then drunk people are yelling stuff and, and you're just like,
right.
So
it's not unlike teaching in that way.
Right? Oh,
like you cannot have the dead, like you cannot have the dead time between transitions and stuff like that. Those transitions have to be tight. Otherwise chaos reigns. Very, very similar in that way.
You're so right. Well, you know what? I mean, I guess we're talking about attention spans, right? So you can't lose those kids' attention span, just like you can lose an audience. You can lose them. And honestly, it doesn't matter how much they paid for the ticket. It is not always easy to get them back. I happen to be pretty good about not losing them. I certainly work very hard to get them back if I do, but, it's actually interesting. You mentioned that I'm a solo artist too. So now that I'm doing the country thing, I have a country band under just my name, Jarrett Reddick. And so we don't have a built-in audience, I mean, sometimes there's 15 people at our show. Sometimes there's 200, sometimes, whatever. And so I'm getting to practice that all over again, it's it's a new thing and they don't know the songs. I mean, they're half the audience is there because, 1985, and then half of them are there because they're fans of just whatever it is I do. It's pretty easy to lose them. Yeah, I could see how that would be a similarity in the classroom too.
Very, very. All right, guys, we are going to take a real quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Those Who Can't Do. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the solo stuff that you're doing now because it is not a pop punk thing. It is country. Um, and that is, I mean, you've been doing it for how long now? I did look before we got on, but now I'm spacing. How long have you been
It's too
doing
much.
this?
Andrea, if I list all of the things that I do, it gives my wife full on anxiety attack. So I don't expect you to be able
I
to
was gonna say you
remember.
are like the ultimate multi hyphenate. Like your Wikipedia is like a mile long. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I made the record about 2.5 years ago. I wrote it second year of COVID, second year of quarantine, I guess. The first year I did the same thing everybody did. The first 3 months, I full on panicked and just drank a bunch with my friends. That we isolated it together. So we have three
Right.
other couples, and they all have kids. So we were like, hey, we can have a social life,
That's awesome.
but it just has to be this. And so that's who we were with all the time or whatever. And that, about June of that year, we're like, guys, we've got to start putting our kids to bed on time. And maybe we only drink 2 days a week, and,
Right. This
and it
might
was,
become a problem.
yeah, exactly. It was just like, we still laugh about it, but that did happen. Like we were just like, we're out of control here. And so anyway, so right after that, I started doing a bunch of shows online, and I wrote a Bowling for Soup record called Pop Drunk Snot Bread. We went and we took a bus up to the Poconos, isolated up there, made the record, lived in a little house a mile away from the studio. It was great. And got back and then worked on getting that record out. And then I'm just like, okay, we still can't go play shows. Now what? And so my buddy Zach, who produced the record, was like, man, you've been talking about doing this country album forever. And you always say you don't have the time, and you have the time. And I'm just like, you're right. Let's just do it. And so he and I wrote the record via text message, which I had never done before, and text message and Google Docs, and pieced all these songs together, and got that record made, and then it came out. I think it took me about a year to get it out. So we've been playing shows now for about 2 years.
You mentioned having an interest in stand-up comedy, and one of the things I actually mentioned to my producers about the album, because I was listening to it this morning, and there is definitely a comedic element to your songwriting too. Like I can't remember specifically what the lyric was, but I was cracking up on my way in this morning because you do have like quite a like comedic piece to the lyrics. Who would you say kind of inspired you in the country side of music? Because you mentioned Ozzy and all the rest for.
Yeah, this goes back to, again, as I said, this is a great throwback to the first of the interview, Andrea. You are a professional.
Thank you so much.
This is driving around in the car with my parents and listening to Waylon and Willie and Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton and dare I say, Neil Diamond and Donna Summer, and just the vastness of what their palette was. But really, a lot of it was the storytellers' country stuff. And so
Yeah.
now knowing that, if you go back and listen to Bowling for Soup songs, 1985, if you listen to Girl the Bad Guys Want, you listen to their stories. And that's the thing that that's the way I write songs. And all of that is due to listening to these storyteller country guys, Johnny Cash.
Yeah, and I actually I noticed that as well, is that because I was thinking that this morning. I was like, these are like the story type songs as opposed to just like the same four lines over and over rewashed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I thought about that too with 1980. Like, it's a story. It's about a person who was dealing with not hitting all their goals, and I thought about that. So I was wondering if it was inspired by Dolly and all the greats.
Absolutely. And I do say I got a Waylon and Willie tattoo, and I actually do. I got Waylon and Willie tattooed on my arm. I don't know if you can see that.
Nice.
This is terrible, terrible angle. I don't know. Listener, I promise I showed it. But yeah. And so, but yeah, so I would say, and then of course I'm an 80s kid. And so Urban Cowboy came out. I think I was in like the second grade. And I'm like, that was like the movie, and like that music. And so Johnny Lee and Mickey Gilley and Charlie Daniels. And so I grew up listening to a lot more country than until that Ozzy thing happened. I mean, it was country and Michael Jackson and John Cougar Mellencamp, and then of course that changed. So country was not in my life for quite some time after that, until I started working construction in the mid 90s. And then you had to listen to that. So, But yeah, I would definitely say that those would be the bigger of the inspirations. So when I made the country record, that's what I wanted to make. I wanted to make an organic country album, especially sound wise, not a Nashville record. I didn't want it to be, because Bowling for Soup is already polished. It's pop punk pop. It is polished. I mean,
Yeah.
and pop punk it's all recorded very slick. And so I already do that. And so I wanted it to feel more, just like where the songs could breathe a little bit, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I really feel like I accomplished it. And now we're on a roll. Like the new stuff that we're doing, it even feels more that way. And I'm really, really happy with where we're heading. The country thing for me really was, I'm going to do this while I have time, and then maybe I'll play a show or two. And then I got the songs together, and then I got my band together, and I was hooked, and
Yeah.
I couldn't stop. And so luckily I have a very supportive wife. In fact, she's so supportive. In the country band, I had to get back in the van, and we're back to grassroots. And so we
Oh,
traded in
yeah.
her car so we could get a van. And
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
that's how supportive she is.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I owe her a car.
Now, you said you've got 3 kids and the oldest is 18?
That's my oldest boy. So my oldest is 21. Her name's Emma. She it will graduate from college in the spring, and my oldest son is 18. He's starting college in the fall, and then my 11-year-old is starting middle school. Yeah, it's interesting. As far as school goes, my older two had it easy. I mean, they were both, popular, and like school wasn't hard, and all that. And my youngest, he's gifted and talented, but he has severe ADHD, and so
Yeah.
it's such a completely different experience as a parent.
Yeah. I have ADHD, and I was not diagnosed until I was an adult. And now I think back about like middle school, and I mean, in 90s, early 2000s, like it was starting to be a thing, but not widely recognized, especially among girls who had ADHD. And I actually had a very similar experience to what you had, where I had one teacher who said, like, you are capable of amazing things. Like, don't turn in garbage to me, basically, because
Right.
I would always wait till the last second, because again, now I know why, because I needed the adrenaline to make my brain focus enough for there to be enough stimulation in my brain to think, okay, I can sit and focus on this. And I would just put things off to the last minute, and then I would get everything done. And I did that one time, and I didn't even like really reread it before I turned it in, and I gave it to her, and she read it, and I think I got like a B- or a C on it. And I was like, sweet, I turned it in the night before. Like, I was a pretty much
Hmm.
C average student. And when she passed it out, she was like, here you go. And I was like, oh, cool. And she's like, no, like you need to do better than this. You have to be able to like push yourself and expect more out of yourself, because you are a talented writer. And that moment was just like I remember exactly that moment where I was just like, oh, well, that's the first time literally anyone has thought anything of me other than I'm the kid who's screwing around and talks too much on the report
Hmm.
card.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and for kids with ADHD, it's so hard because and my daughter also has ADHD, and she's in kindergarten. And it's this morning I was talking to her about cleaning her room, and she's like, I just can't keep things straight. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, baby girl, like me too. And that, like, we just got to keep working on it. And sometimes we got to make lists and all of that. And it can be really hard because I think there's also a misconception that kids with ADHD don't want to do well or aren't
Hmm.
motivated enough to do well.
Yeah.
And for long time for me, that was the case. Is I wasn't super motivated until later. But for my daughter, she is so motivated to do well. So she is more frustrated by her distraction than anybody else is. And
Hmm.
she's so hard on herself. And as a parent, it's so hard to see that and to see them struggling and just be like, I want to be like, I want to
It
help.
is.
Like, what can I do?
I had I had no understanding of it. I never experienced it. So my wife is my second marriage, and so he is ours, and then my older two are from a previous life, and so I had never experienced this. So my wife has ADHD, and I just thought she was messy and artistic, and whatever,
Yeah.
and that she loses stuff, and she's,
Hmm.
I mean, she's the best in the world, but like, I would just be like, why? How do you lose a debit card? Like, I didn't even understand how that's possible. It does not compute, right? And so
Right.
I began like learning. You're laughing because you've done it, right?
Because I know exactly how I lose my debit card because I just throw it in my purse and then it falls out and then it's in the bottom of my car. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Oh, that is exactly what happens. Or in her back
Yeah.
pocket, and it's like,
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly what she does. And so,
Yeah.
I've become sympathetic to all of that. I've read a lot of articles. We're in counseling at all times just to better our marriage, and we're doing the work all the time just to make sure that we're on the same page. And but I've learned so much about it. And so, knowing, watching her watch Everett, and just, I feel so badly for her because I know she knows how it feels, and,
Yeah.
but like the room thing, right? Like he sees that as 25 towers of things that are just like looming over him. And it's just like, dude,
Yeah.
and I remember when he was a little kid, it'd be like, dude, stay in your room until it's clean. And that kid would stay in there all day and not do one thing.
Forever. I'll be here all day and I'm going to make more of a mess while I'm in there.
Yeah,
Like it's not
exactly.
happening.
And I'd be like,
Yeah.
dude, listen to me. Do one thing and then come tell me what you did. Do another thing, come tell me what you did. Do another thing. And in 15 minutes, his room was clean. And he would understand it and he would go, oh, okay, well, and then the next time it towers over him. And school works the same way.
Yep.
He's so overwhelmed by the fact that there's 25 questions, and I'm like, man, that's not 25 questions, dude. That's 5 questions 5 times. You could do this, and we chunk work and things like that.
Yeah.
I think back to probably those ADHD kids when I was a kid, and I'm 52, and so again 80s, and I remember there's this kid named Chris Brown who he had to go to the library twice a day and jump on a mini trampoline for 30 minutes every day because he was hyperactive. And you'd go in there and he'd be like jumping up and down, hey guys, and be like, but we didn't understand, like, why is he jumping on a trampoline in there? But I look back and just go, man, I bet a bunch of those kids that were in resource weren't dumb. They just didn't know how to learn. And the teachers back then, honestly, and it's not their fault, but they didn't know how to teach them. And I'm so happy that my son is growing up at a time to where, like, it's not necessarily the first thing. The first move is not just to medicate, of course that's an option. And yes, he's medicated, just so I don't want to sound like that's a bad thing. It's a great thing.
Right.
But, there are other things that you can try and do and just to make them more comfortable. But he's the same way as you were. He will just go like, I can't help it. I just talk too much. I need to move. I need to not be here because I'm annoying people and I'm keeping them from doing their work. And it frustrates me. And it's, gosh, your heart just hurts so much for them,
Yeah. And you want them so bad to have it easier,
Yeah.
And especially, like as the parent with ADHD that like gifted this to my child, right? Like I'm like, great. Like I really set you up well for that one. But I mean, the way that I always expressed it to a lot of people, because while I was teaching throughout the pandemic, I was also getting my PhD, and my son was born, my younger child was born in April of 2020. So like thick of the pandemic. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my PhD over that time, and people were like, well, how do you do it? And I was like, ADHD. Like, I know like a lot of people feel like there's like that can only ever be a hindrance, but to be so for real, I'm able to compartmentalize in a way that most people can't because I forget. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. Like, I literally forget about everything else when I am doing whatever task is right in front of me. And that's to my detriment. Like, if I'm thinking about something else, the very, very commonly, I will do something insane, like put the remote in the fridge. Like, I can't tell you how many times things like that have happened. But that also means that we're able to accomplish a lot and have a lot of energy and all of that. And so I think that is one of the encouraging things that for kids who are dealing with that.
It's a true superpower.
Exactly.
Like and I watch this with my wife. Again, she thinks she can multitask, but she can't. Like she makes a sandwich and like leaves the ingredients out on the counter after she's done. And then she starts something and then she moves on to something else. And then, and then this thing never gets finished. Whatever. Now that frustrates the heck out of her. She hates it. I'm now understanding of it or whatever. But when she just decides like, oh man, people are coming over, this girl can clean the house in 15 minutes. And you would literally think that 3 maids came in and worked all day. Like it is when she focuses on she's an artist. And so if she starts to paint, she just loses 4 hours. Like she's so hyper focused and she's the same. She can read and like really, really consume a book. And, but like you said, if she can get focused on something, and I think that's the thing with Everett, right? Is that he can focus so much on a video game on his phone that he doesn't know that the world is happening around him. It's like, I wish, he'll figure it out, but eventually he'll be able to take that concentration and, we're having a lot of wins. I mean, he finally, accepted the fact that he's going to be the last person done on standardized testing. And he is like insanely high in everything now because he's not freaking out and just guessing because he thinks he's supposed to be done. So he's learning about it. And I'm glad that him at 11, I'm glad we have the resources to be able to educate him, for him to educate himself on, okay, why does my mind do this to me? Why aren't I like other kids? Like, why can't I do this and this and this? And, and we try to tell him all the time, dude, it's a superpower. You just it's just like, any of the movies that we watch, Spider-Man had to learn to use his web, dude, like you're going to figure that out. And when you do, you're going to be able to use that, and you think back, you think about, like you, you are a renowned freaking educator and you're doing all this great stuff and putting all this cool content into the world and all of this. And like, I would have never thought you had ADHD. And I think that's awesome that you're willing to share that too. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, it was always really important to me because I didn't get diagnosed until a few years ago. And it was one of those things where I feel like the stigma has lessened quite a bit. I remember when I was in high school, like it was almost like a dirty word, that if you had ADHD or you had something like that going on. But then when I was able to put a name to why my brain works the way that it does and why, for whatever reason, I could not write my dissertation unless I was listening to music so loud that I could literally hear nothing else because that was the level of stimulation my brain needed in order to focus on something I found like really boring. Like I listened to the soundtrack of Hamilton that was for some reason that was the magic ticket. I don't know if it was like the rhythm of it or what, but I listened to it probably hundreds of times the year that I wrote my dissertation. And to be able to take that and then take it into my classroom and know that when my student, who I know because they've got an IEP, that they've got ADHD and they want to listen to music while they're doing their writing in my class, of course they should be able to, because I'm the exact same way, and so like as an educator, I always felt like it was really important to share and empathize with kids because they need to know it's not just them. Otherwise they grow up thinking like, well, something's broken in my brain. And I'm like, no, 100%. Like it actually can be.
They think they're dumb. They think that they're, it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I find that so fascinating because my wife is you guys must have the same grade of,
I think so.
Of ADHD or something because
sounds like it.
She's the same way. Like she listens to really loud music. And to me, music is just such a distraction. Like I don't even listen to music while I drive because if I listen to music while I drive, I get sucked into that. And I just miss turns. I forget where I'm going, because music is just such a thing for me. So I have to listen to podcasts or talk radio or, things like that. Like it can't be music. And I also don't like loud music and I'm in a rock band.
How are you a rock star who doesn't like loud music?
I know it is the weirdest thing. Like I like everything on 3, and I mean, I want to, be able to understand all the words and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. And that's as loud as it needs to be. And I'm like,
So funny.
first thing I do when I get in her car, turn the music down and I come home, sit down at the kitchen table, and I'll be, Alexa, turn down to 3,
Oh
But
my
she's
gosh,
the
that's
same
amazing.
way, just the
That is great.
loud thing. It's crazy. Yeah, man. But
Yeah.
so Everett is on what we call I think it's Texas. We call it a 504,
Yeah.
and so he gets certain things, and we're allowed to review them at any time. You call her, it's really official. The principal comes in and the counselor and all this. And so there's little things that they can do to try to help him and to offer him or whatever. If he wants to move his
Yeah.
seat, he's allowed to do that. He's allowed to have a fidget spinner, though he doesn't really do that, or fidget item or whatever if he
Mm-hmm.
needs it. And there, there's things like that are in place for him to be
Yeah.
able to do. It's just, I think the hard thing for us as parents is that, like, they do everything so differently now as far as like where our schools are. Like, the kid doesn't just come home with homework and like a list of things he's supposed to do. Like, a lot of times they don't send things home. And
Yeah.
so we're unaware of like how behind he is, in
Mm-hmm.
school and that. And so we had to like literally like create a new kind of communication just so that we could have any sort of awareness into like what it is, because
Yeah.
um, he's so overwhelmed that he doesn't lie. He'll tell you he's behind, but
Yeah.
he won't. I mean, he won't tell you how behind he is unless you specifically ask. Like, he's smart, but again, he's honest. But I
Yeah.
can't say enough about teachers. I mean, I said this during the pandemic. I think the value of teachers for all of us, even all of us who are super super pro teacher, when you start to try and homeschool a second grader, especially a second grader that at the time is in Spanish immersion. Uh,
Oof.
my wife, I mean, I think she aged 5 years. It's that poor woman, and
Yeah.
I felt terrible. I mean, there's nothing I can do. I have to go in the studio, and I mean, I've got to do my, my thing. And, uh,
Yeah.
you know, by the way, I didn't mean like age 5 years in her look. She's absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Don't get yourself in trouble.
I painted myself
Her
right in the car.
soul.
I meant her soul. I
Her
swear.
soul. You know what? We have a lot of teacher followers or listeners, and they know the kind of aging that happens from teaching. So it's all
No,
right.
man,
It's
that
it's in the
homeschool
soul.
thing. I tell you, I said it. I have
Yeah.
a podcast called the Rockstar Dad Show, and we would talk about it each week, and I'd just be like, I don't know how they do it. Like, and all these moms that now, like, why when a mom gets mad at the school or whatever happens, and they're like, I'm just going to homeschool or whatever, that kid is always back in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh
it's just
yeah.
because you it's not even really the teaching aspect of it. It's the fact that, like, you already have sort of this relationship with your child. And then, like, now this is a whole different thing. And it's
Yeah.
almost like, actually, this is a fine example of it. It's like, I'll be like, Everett's taking drum lessons. Well, are you teaching him? And I'm like, that kid doesn't want to learn drums for me. Like, that kid wants to play Minecraft and watch funny videos with me. Like, he doesn't
Right.
want to sit there and me tell him how to play the drum. He needs an outsider to come in
Right.
so that guy can go, no, that's how you do it. Because he's 11, but he still thinks he's smarter than me most of the time. And I'll like have to calm him down and go, dude, I am 52 years old. I've been around the world 17 times. I have been to countries that you don't even know and will never even hear of in your life. And you have got to accept the fact that I'm smarter than you.
I am delighted by the thought that he wouldn't be a very receptive learner for learning drums from you. I think that is the funniest thing. Like, that's so typical, right? Like,
Yeah.
immediately, like, your parents are lame. It does not matter if they are a touring musician and rock star. Like, doesn't matter. They don't know what they're talking about. He doesn't know how to teach me drums.
Yeah.
Like
Tiger Woods doesn't teach his son, Charlie, how to play
I
golf.
believe that. Yeah.
He doesn't. That's not his instructor. Like, that's not a thing.
Oh my gosh. And it's so funny because I know I would have been the same way. Like, if my parents had been like, let me teach you this thing that I'm literally an expert at. No, thank you. Not interested in that.
But also there's our reaction, right? There's us, like we as parents, like, I'm a very patient parent. I don't really get mad a lot, and I'm I'm a pretty level-headed guy, and especially as a parent. But there's a frustration when your child just can't get it. Like, it's just like, just get it. Just like, I'm showing you
just
this.
understand.
Just understand this and then do it, like, and I think with instructions of things, I just feel like you need a middleman, to be able to go, yeah, I understand. I had trouble with that too, or whatever. But it's definitely, he doesn't want any part of that. Like, my wife will go, yeah, your dad could probably show you how to do that. He'll go, oh yeah, that's great. And he walks out of the room. That's it.
He like looks up a YouTube video. He's like, anyone but Jaret Reddick playing this song.
Playing this song. 100%. Yeah. Kids are so lucky, man. You can do anything now. Like,
yes. Having the access to YouTube, it's crazy.
You're younger than me. You're quite a bit. You're probably about my wife's age. She's 34.
Yeah, I'm 37.
In the 80s, like, we bought books on how to solve a Rubik's Cube. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't, and now you could just, anything that you want to, if you want to juggle, you can be juggling by lunchtime.
Yeah.
You just look it up and a kid teaches you how to do it. And it's the coolest thing in the world.
Right. It just further allows kids to ignore their parents when they're trying to teach them something that they know really well. Like, nope, 100%. Sorry. I'm going to go watch somebody else.
You know what the best thing is? The best triumph for 80s kids is that we wouldn't get to use calculators on tests because our teachers would say, yeah, you're never going to, what are you going to carry around a calculator with you all the time? And now you're like, oh, I carry around a computer with me all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. It's like,
exactly.
And so my kids, when they were in high school, they're like, yeah, we just get to use our phones. Like, because they're like, yeah, you're always going to have your phone, so it's like, man, you wish you could just go back in time to the 80s and go, yes, I am going to have a calculator on me.
Right. Oh my gosh. So good. Okay. So before I let you go, can you share where people can find you, where you're touring, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. Right now, Bowling for Soup is celebrating 20 years of our biggest record, A Hangover You Don't Deserve, which has 1985 and Almost in Ohio. And so we're in the U.S. right now. We actually just started. So you can get those tickets, bowlingforsoup.com. We'll be heading back to the UK and Australia, and we'll announce some Texas dates for next year. And then country stuff, I'm playing in between Bowling for Soup touring and putting out new music in both. And that's just at jarretrayreddick.com. But social media at JARET2113 or Jaret Reddick on TikTok. And, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. This was super fun. I appreciate you making the time.
Thanks for having me. And you've got an awesome staff, by the way. Everybody's just so friendly. And I whenever we were going to schedule this and you were like, yeah, I'll have my people call you or whatever. And I'm like, oh, you're like big time podcast.
My team makes me seem very big time. I will give them all the credit for that. They definitely do. So
it's very official, these bookings.
It is.
Thank you for having me. You're awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, guys, we will be right back. Welcome back to Those Who Can't Do. I have to tell you guys, that was so cool for me. Like, getting to chat with Jarrett and honestly just learning that I have so much in common with his kid and his wife and his educational experience that he shared with us, I think was just really telling, because it's a good reminder for me as an educator to make sure that I'm being intentional about kind of seeking out those kids that need what he needed, where, his drama teacher that talked to him and was like, hey, like, I see greatness in you. I know we all do that. And I know that for a lot of us, it comes really naturally. But I think for me, what I find is that the more burned out I am and the less greatness I feel in myself, the harder it can be for me to do that with my students. And especially now that I'm teaching college, it's a little bit of a different dynamic. In high school, it was very easy to kind of see those kids because you see them every single day. And now I only see them a couple times a week. So it's just a good reminder for me to seek out the adults that I'm working with and make sure that they know that I'm rooting for them and I see them for all of their strengths and all of that. Because I think we all need that, even if we're no longer in high school or in college. We like to be believed in. I think that's incredibly powerful. If you have thoughts about what we talked about today, or you have suggestions about who you think should come on next, you can hit us up at Andrea@human-content.com or on TikTok and Instagram at Educator Andrea. You can also visit us or visit my podcast family at Human Content Pods. And thank you guys so much for those of you who have left feedback on Apple Podcasts. I was going to say Amazon for some reason. I don't know why. We just had Prime Day. I think that's why my brain is like Amazon at Prime reviews. Okay, got it. On Apple Podcasts and on YouTube, which is where this one came from, at Teacher Kelly Tag, left on the YouTube video with Devin Siebold, two of my favorite teachers. Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate that. If you want to catch those full video episodes, they're up every week on YouTube at Educator Andrea. Thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Andrea Forcum, and a very special thank you to our guest co-host, Jarrett Reddick, today. Our executive producers are Andrea Forcum, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor is Andrew Sims. Our engineer is Jason Pertizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. Our recording location is Indiana State by College of Education. To learn more about our Those Who Can't Do, oh, guys, man, the words now. I got so flustered by talking to one of my rockstar heroes that now I can't. It's just going to be a secret what our program disclaimer and ethics policies are, and our submission verification and licensing terms that you can find at podcasterandrea.com, because I'm not going to tell you anything else about them. You're going to have to go look for yourself. And Those Who Can't Do is a human content production. Thank you so much for watching. If you're like me and you're thinking, gosh, I really need more Those Who Can't Do in my life, you can start your binging right now by clicking on that playlist button right over there. New episodes are out every Thursday, so please subscribe and join us each week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.